Hey guys, how's it going this evening? It's been a busy few days for me. Got out a big, long interview, which you should go check out on my channel already. Um, and got to work on just some other long-form content I have planned, so that's pretty sweet. I haven't been putting these out for a few days. I still plan on finishing my 30, but this is day 27, so I've got like 4 more for this series, and then we're going this one and 3 more, and then we're going to be working on some other series that I have, including the interviews. Want to do more interviews? If that's something you're interested in, let me know. I'm very, very interested to do more of those with people, so go like, subscribe, all of that good stuff. Check out the Instagram. You'll love it. Something I've been thinking about lately especially is I put out quite a lot of content, or I have been putting out quite a lot of content, and people who follow me have been complaining that they can't keep up with all the content. So I have started to dial it back just a little bit. I'm working on like three posts on Instagram per day right now, which is a little bit more manageable, maybe 4 if I'm really intense. And then also we're going to probably dial back the long form content to about 1 or 2 per week, and I want to do more interviews, which will be fun, but we'll still do these occasionally as well. So just keeping that in mind, we're going to finish this series and then start working on some other stuff. The last few days have been really fun. Got to go down to Vancouver for took my brother down for his birthday. That was a great time. Had a great trip, honestly. And yeah, just been working on a few really fun things. So working on a lot of things when it relates to business and how that's looking for the future. So very intense, very exciting. Have lots of stuff planned. And what I actually wanted to talk about today was business, because I know a lot of you guys are interested in business and a lot of you guys are working on this, and I've just been studying it quite a lot lately. And I wanted to kind of do like a rundown on partnerships versus corporations and the differences therein, and how you can save money on some taxes, etc., and what you kind of want to start. So proprietorships, partnerships, and corporations. So to start with, the most basic, simple thing you could possibly be in business is an employee. And employees are pretty straightforward. You already are one, probably, and you work for somebody. They pay you an hourly wage, or they pay you by the job, and you get money into your bank account that way. Pretty straightforward, pretty easy to understand. No complications there, right? Not where you want to be at. Not where you want to stay unless you enjoy being an employee. If you like being an employee, good for you, man. Enjoy your life. Don't want to sound cynical, but not where I'd position myself, obviously. Another step up from that would be a sole proprietor. And a sole proprietor he owns a business, but he's the only owner. He runs it himself, and it's kind of very much like self-employed. You employ yourself to do things, and you find work, and you're very much on your own, which I love. And the cool thing about this is you start getting into things like, it's tougher because you're in your own tax bracket, in a higher tax bracket, so you typically get taxed more. So for instance, you get taxed at 30% instead of like 24. It's a bit more brutal that way, but you do get, you get to be your own boss. You get to find the work that you want to do. You get to decide, you get to start a business essentially, and you can be very successful as a sole proprietor. Then we get into what I really want to talk about, which is corporations versus partnerships, and et cetera, and how to start those all up. Especially as a family, wanting to figure that out as a family, because this is something that matters a lot to us as a family, working on business and stuff, right? So the number one big thing you should be thinking about is corporation. A corporation is typically something you only want to start once you are making an extra 30 grand per year, in Canada anyway, an extra $30,000 per year that you're not taking out of the business. So let's say you make $100,000 in a year, you actually use $70,000 for your business expenses, taxes, and personal bills and expenses, right? That's a good chunk of money. The extra 30K, if you leave that in the account, you only pay, in the business, you only pay 11% tax on that, which is insane. That's a huge savings for tax, but it costs you about $3,000 to set up a corporation and pay for a lawyer and accountant every year, which is why you would only do that when you have about $30,000 in there, because that equates to about $3,000 that you're saving, and then you're paying less tax money, and then you start saving money. And it's easier to do certain things in a corporation, like finances, get financing, hold companies without any liability. For instance, if you have a corporation now, and that corporation owns, the company, right, or the business. Now, if you get sued, you are not personally your own personal house isn't going to be at risk, etc. So you definitely want to get into a corporation as soon as you can, but it takes time to get there. You can't just start that right away. Whereas, for instance, a partnership, if you're going into a business with somebody, you might want to start as a partnership first, because a partnership essentially just you combine your books with somebody else, your accounting books with somebody else, and now you pay taxes on what you make in a year. You don't leave money in the partnership. It gets divvied out at the end of the year between you and your partner, or partners, depending on how many there are, and you all individually pay taxes on your income. Here's the cool part. As a partner, it's a little bit easier. If you're working for the business, it's easier to change your tax bracket. For instance, if I make $100,000 and my wife makes 50, but we become partners in a business, and that now is our business, we can now lower. My wife now makes, she makes a little extra. Maybe she makes 70, and I make $70,000 a year, and I only make 80. Now we've dropped our tax bracket a little bit because we're working together as partners, and we can kind of split the income a little bit easier. You still have to be careful. You can't just be paying, your 2-year-old child a bunch of money, because the IRS or the CRA, if you're in Canada, are going to be like, bro, what are you doing? Hey, actually, we want our money out of this, and the kid is not doing any work for you, so they don't like that. But it is a good way to share the tax burden a little bit easier if you're doing it legally and properly. And one of the big things you need to think about, because a lot of people have this stigma against partnerships. It's not that partnerships are bad. A lot of people have a stigma against going into business with somebody. It's not that they're bad. It's that you need to have an exit strategy figured out. So if you're nervous about going into partnerships with somebody, this is the video for you. You need to have your business exit game figured out. For instance, there's the 4 Ds, okay? Death, disability, divorce, and disagreement. Those 4 things are going to be how your business either continues to run or fails. If one of your partners dies, now who is in charge of their business, right? Is it now their wife who is now your partner? If someone becomes disabled and can no longer run the business mentally, that could be now the government that becomes your partner. You don't want the government as your partner. Maybe there's a disagreement, a major disagreement over a certain business, a business expense that you want to buy, and now your business is torn apart because people can't agree on how to run this business. Or there's a divorce, and now someone's ex-husband or ex-wife is trying to take half of their partnership, right? All of these things are big concerns when you're starting a business, but if you get into it carefully, and you get into it with the goal of, we got to create a draft for something that'll show us how to build this business properly, show us how to structure it, so that in the event that any of these things happen, we have a way out. For instance, one way is having a shotgun agreement, right? A shotgun agreement is when someone comes and says, hey, I want to get out of the business. You can say, okay, well, here's my offer for your part of the business, right? But here's where the shotgun effect comes into place. If he doesn't like your offer, or he thinks it's too low, he can turn around and buy your portion of the business for that price. So you don't want to offer him too high, because then you are getting a bad deal for his part of the business, but you don't want to offer him too low, because then, he could buy your portion. And the area where that wouldn't work is if, your partner is a millionaire and you're broke. Now he has all of the access to buy your portion of the business for a little bit more and have all the control, right? So there's benefits, pros and cons to these different agreements you can work out. But basically, if you want to get into business, the number one thing you need to remember is figure out your strategy. Figure out a business model so that in the event that things go bad, you will have a way to deal with it. You'll have an exit strategy. You will understand that this is who gets what, this is how it deals with. If someone dies, no, their spouse doesn't immediately get to sell off their portion of the business. You get to work through that. Maybe you get to buy it off of them first. You get first refusal, right? Which means basically they get to offer it to you, and if you say no, then they get to offer it to someone else, but they have to offer it to you first, etc. Things like that. All these things help protect you and protect your partnership, protect your business. And they're very important. And so very interesting. So a corporation and a partnership are essentially the same thing. Partnerships seem more confusing, but it's just they're more flexible. So if you want very, very structure, banks just find it easier to work with shareholders and shares, right? You get 25% of the shares, you get 25% of the profits, easy. Whereas with a partnership, it's hard to gauge how much each partnership is worth, because you could be worth, one person could be making $100,000 a year and working full time, and the other person makes 10 grand a year and only works every other weekend. And there's a big difference in the amount of money they make, even though they're partners, right? And that's why it's a little bit more confusing. But the thing about it, you got to realize is at the end of the year, you divide up what you think you, as partners, you made for the year, and then that's your income for the year. The only difference is you're not keeping that extra 11% as, the corporation part of things. You're not keeping that extra 11% tax gain under a corporation, which is, the one benefit to having a partnership. And just, I want to talk a lot more about business and stuff. It's something I'm learning. I'm definitely, as you can tell, I'm not a pro at business or understanding how it all works, but I want to talk about it more with you guys because I find it very interesting, and I just hope you found that interesting. Yeah, and I think that's all we're going to talk about today. Have a great rest of your day. Check me out on Instagram. It's been a tiring few weeks, man, so, stay in there. Keep working hard.